take two of my second Periscope that I'm doing in my life. This is real estate attorney Roy Oppenheim. Of course, I'm getting this wonderful feedback over here from Leah, Fein. Thank you very much. Anyway, I want to thank you all for joining me. Anyone who was here last time, last Friday, I want to thank you. I want to thank you for joining me again today. We're going to try and do this in such a way that as I speak, any questions that you all have, Leah will be gracious enough to read me those questions so I don't have to walk and chew gum at the same time. Today we're going to proceed with our lunchtime law on Periscope. Of course, it's lunchtime somewhere, but it's certainly not lunchtime here anymore. And we're going to talk about the impact of what a strong dollar, a weak stock market, and cheap oil is going to have on the South Florida real estate market. And no, I'm not Gary Vaynerchuk. No, I'm not going to sell a book. No, I'm going to scream and yell. I'm not going to squeak and greek and geek. But we are going to talk about something substantive. And Gary, I hope you can join us. And I'm just joking. I think you're great, and what you're doing for live streaming is wonderful. But I am not selling anything today. What we do want to do is have an engaging conversation about what these macroeconomic issues are going to have on the economy and how it's going to affect all of us in one way or another. So first of all, do we have a few people following us at all?
We do. We have Jeff Sherman.
Oh, thanks, Jeff.
And we have Stu.
Stu, great. Thank you very much. Okay.
And they're ready. They're giving you hearts, and they're ready to listen.
God bless all of you. Okay, let's begin with a strong dollar. As most of you know, the dollar is doing very well vis-a-vis the rest of the world economy. And part of that has to do with the price of oil, but particularly what impact does that have on the South Florida real estate market? Well, the most obvious thing is our neighbors to our north, our Canadian friends. They are a petrol-based, carbon-based economy. And so, unfortunately, their Canadian dollar is being pummeled by the U.S. dollar. In fact, I just went skiing a few weeks ago and everything was on sale like 35% off. And if you want to buy some good real estate, now's the time to actually buy real estate up in Canada, interestingly enough. But having said that, our Canadian friends are going to be down here a little less. They are usually great snowbirds, and many times they do buy real estate one way or the other. And so we're hearing both anecdotally and statistically that they are hurting a little bit in terms of their ability to come down in the first place, or certainly to buy real estate, because everything is now all of a sudden 30% more expensive than it previously was. So that's Canada. But another part of the South Florida real estate market is, of course, the high-end condo market, which has gotten a lot of attention, which we talked about last week as it relates to these secret buyers. And by the way, what we subsequently learned about that is that it's only if you use cash, traveler's checks, or bank checks. If you actually wire funds in, the new regulations about limitations on the $3 million buyers in New York and the $1 million buyers in Florida do not apply. I mean, we have a title company, and we rarely take those kinds of currencies. So I don't know what kind of title company in the first place is taking cashier's checks. There's so many fraudulent cashier's checks out there. I mean, wires are the way to go. So I think that may be a bunch of hooey. But anyway, getting back on point, we're seeing that our South American and Central American neighbors, their currencies are being hammered. Of course, they're being hammered because of the price of oil in part, and also because their economies aren't doing that well. You have issues in Russia, in Europe, and so all these folks typically were buying for cash in the high-end condo market. And so we're going to see, I think, a softening of the high-end condo market. You have many folks who have put down 10, well, not more than 10, more like 30, 40, 50% of deposits for these units. And so the real question will be, will there be a bubble? Will they be able to ultimately close on their units for cash, or will they end up having to borrow money to fulfill their closing obligations in a year or two? Or maybe the economies will kind of bounce back, and so there won't be a problem with the currency exchange rate. So on the strong dollar, we're going to see some changes both in terms of our neighbors to the north, our neighbors to the south, as well as from our friends overseas in terms of their ability to continue to infuse the high-end cash aspect of the Florida real estate market. And so that deals with the strong dollar. Thank you very much. We'll get rid of this piece of paper right here.
And we'd like to say hello to somebody that has chimed in, kind of new, Todd Templin. Thank you for joining us.
Hey, Todd. How you doing, buddy? Thanks for joining you. I hope I answered your question yesterday.
Yeah. And Todd is a PR executive in South Florida. He's a former TV newsman, and he loves golf and the Gators. So, hi. Thanks, Mr. Templin.
And say hi to your lovely wife, Christy, please, for me. Okay, let's talk about the weak stock market. It's kind of an interesting scenario because while the stock market goes down, real estate as an alternative investment form actually becomes a lot more attractive. Certainly, it's more stable, it's real, you don't have these ups and downs, you don't have the surprises, and you get to enjoy it whether you're going to rent it out or use it. And so, all of a sudden, folks who do have extra cash and who ordinarily would be putting money in the stock market, I can tell you, are seriously looking to invest in real estate instead. And so I think a weak stock market in a peculiar way actually encourages folks to look at real estate as a strong alternative investment. Maybe they weren't going to get the returns that they previously got, but they're certainly not going to have the losses that they're going to have if they're prudent and if there's not another scenario like we had in the last 10 years. So on the one hand, I think a weak stock market encourages people to buy real estate. On the other hand, and I think this is more particular in the middle market range, is that folks who need a deposit, a down payment to initiate a real estate transaction, whether it's for a second home because you're retiring or whether it's because your kid's buying their first home or whether because you're trying to trade up. Many times people have money locked in the stock market, and now they're going to think really long and hard whether or not they're going to want to liquidate a position, for example, like Apple stock. I mean, let's say you had a ton of Apple stock, and now you're saying to yourself, should I really sell my Apple stock now? It's taken a hit. It's really down. If I do that, I'm going to lose my position. Yeah, I'll be able to pull out the cash, but now I'm going to lose all the upside that I previously had or that I expected. And so people are going to either do one of two things. They're going to wait to make that purchase, or they're going to scale back on the size of the purchase because they are not going to be able to put together the large deposit that they originally had. Any questions on the stock market issue? Anyone falling asleep or want me to move on here?
Well, we're going to be recording this, so we can certainly play it to different audiences that choose to watch it at any time that they'd like to.
Anyway, okay, so we've talked about a strong dollar and the impact on the South Florida real estate market. We're talking about the weak stock market. And so what we're seeing is that in each situation, there's both a positive and a negative impact. Although on the strong dollar, I don't really see much of a positive impact on the real estate market. If anyone has a scenario where a strong dollar helps the real estate market, I'd like to hear that. I guess the only place it would help is if you're a currency trader probably and have done well and now you've had a windfall and you want to buy some high-end property on South Beach. But short of that, I think that with trade being affected in terms of our ability to export goods, people are not going to have a windfall there, and that the folks overseas are certainly not going to have the liquidity that they need to proceed with buying real estate based on the currency exchange rate. So strong dollar doesn't really help South Florida real estate market. Weak stock market can help the South Florida real estate market by providing an alternative secondary investment for those people who traditionally would have been investing in the real estate market. Negative is that it may put some headwinds on someone who's trying to liquidate a stock position in order to end up with a down payment. So now we have two things. Cheap oil. What is the impact of cheap oil on the South Florida real estate market? And some of that is going to dovetail what we've previously said, and then there are going to be some additional issues. But before I do that, I guess no one wants to ask a question?
No, right now we're good.
Am I getting any hearts?
Yes.
Oh, listen, I'm getting some hearts. Well, thanks for the hearts. Who's giving me hearts? I have to acknowledge the hearts.
Andrea Crows is.
Oh, well, geez, thanks. Thanks, Andrea. Okay, let's talk about cheap oil. Obviously, those economies, particularly in South America, that rely to a large extent on running their economy based on pumping oil, they clearly are going to end up with less cash available for folks to buy South Florida real estate. And part of that problem deals with, of course, the currency issue, and so the two are very, very correlative in that context. Cheap oil, I think, also may encourage buyers to buy homes that maybe are a little further out from the metropolitan areas, because previously, when people were worried about how much their commute could cost in terms of actual gasoline expenses, that becomes less of a variable. Further, energy costs may not be as much of a concern in terms of how much and how large a house you buy. People were concerned that they buy a house and they needed 2 or 3 air conditioning units versus 1 or 2. That would be an additional increase in costs, and if energy prices remain stable, then we can expect that our electric bills will not go out of control. And so that's a second concern that I think we could attribute to what cheap oil would have on the South Florida real estate market. The other thing we've talked about already on the cheap dollar and it deals with cheap oil, as long as there's cheap oil, we will not see our Canadian friends down here as much. And so yes, you have a weak Canadian dollar, but that weak Canadian dollar is a byproduct of cheap oil, and that we've always seen that as oil goes higher, our U.S. dollar usually starts to weaken. But as long as energy prices remain in this 25, 30, 35, under probably $50, $60, I think it's fair to expect that you're going to have a problem with the Canadians coming down here, and that's going to have an impact on the demographics of South Florida and on the purchasing power of a good portion of the population that historically has been coming down here for many years. And then the billion-dollar question, the 900-pound gorilla in the room, is how long will oil remain cheap, and why is oil so cheap? And people are saying, well, because the Chinese economy has slowed down, but that's only part of it. I know that if as people change their light bulbs to those more efficient light bulbs, that is reducing energy consumption by 10 or 20% worldwide, and those light bulbs are getting less expensive, and incandescent bulbs are on their way up. So we're seeing that, of course, as an issue. And then we're seeing cars. A car that used to get 19 or 20 miles per gallon now gets 24, 26 miles per gallon. Well, if you do the math, that's a 20-30% reduction in gasoline consumption. And then, of course, you have all the hybrids that are out there that then push cars from 25 to 30 to 40 to 50 miles per gallon. And then you have the Teslas and the GMs and the Fords of the world, and even the Toyotas that are going to all come out with completely electric cars, and there will be absolutely no gasoline consumption there. So I think what we're seeing is just a lot of factors that are coming to bear here. And of course, the largest factor, of course, is technology and the impact that technology has had on the extraction of oil, such as through fracking and other techniques that just allow there to be so much more oil than we ever envisioned. In fact, I remember it was probably 10, 15 years ago, I went to some crazy seminar at some fancy steakhouse, and the theory was peak oil. The world has only a finite amount of oil, and we've hit that peak, and now we're going to decline. Well, I'm not going to name names, but it was one of the most distinguished investment banks in the United States that was touting peak oil. In fact, if anyone's out there, you can Google the construct of peak oil. And it was fallacious, it was false, it was wrong, it was based on bogus theories, and one of the theories was that the Earth is not producing any more oil, or that we would not be able to have new technology to extract more oil. All wrong, all bogus, all not true. The Earth is constantly producing more oil. We just can't always find it. But when you have an earthquake, a lot of times oil starts to move around, and all of a sudden there's oil that becomes available that wasn't available before. Okay. And now we have new techniques to extract that oil that previously we didn't. So I think the idea that oil is going to go back to $100 a barrel is going to probably require some sort of major country gets boycotted, where a major country can't produce oil because of some sort of international crisis. I'm not going to pontificate or express what some of those crises could be, but the people who are touting that oil will again go up are banking literally on some sort of international crisis to occur, and I don't necessarily buy into that construct.
I was waiting to see, excuse me, if there was a code to log into the Twitter. Okay. So we were waiting for our questions, because Andrea isn't getting questions too that are feeding.
You are getting them, or you're not getting them? Why are we not getting them?
They should be coming up on mine if I would have broadcast it through the Twitter, to the
right.
feeds. But it is working, and
so we're not getting any questions?
We're not able to get questions because we have 2 viewers, because it hasn't been, we haven't broadcasted to enough of our audience through Twitter. So for some reason, if we're on it, we're figuring out some things. We're going to record this, and this will be played back again on our Facebook page, as well as our Google Plus, and on our blog. So we want to thank anybody who's been watching this live. However, we'll be able to watch it for 24 hours, and then we'll upload it to all of our real estate assets on the digital networks. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Leah. Thank you, Andrea.
Thanks, Mr.
Have a great weekend. Thank you very much.